Before you watch She-Hulk on Disney Plus, I'm going to give some basic information about Jennifer Walters in the comics, as well as some info on other characters we'll see in this series. So if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content. So in the comics, Jennifer Walters is a lawyer who gets shot by Nicholas Trask, who's a mob boss, because she was defending a gang member in court who had been betrayed by Trask. Now, Walters was left in critical condition, and as a result, Bruce Banner, who is her cousin, gave her a blood transfusion, which led to her mutating from his gamma-irradiated blood, and she turned into She-Hulk as a result. Now, traditionally, Jennifer Walters is able to control her transformation into She-Hulk, and it also keeps her wits about her, unlike how Hulk is normally portrayed in media and stuff, and of course outside of the Professor Hulk manifestation we see in the MCU currently. So She-Hulk has gone on in the comics to be a prominent member of the Avengers, as well as briefly a member of the Fantastic Four. Now, the antagonist of this series looks like it's going to be Titania, who is a prominent rival of She-Hulk in the comics as well. In the comics, the traditional Titania's name is Mary McFerrin, who was always considered to be small and scrawny, and at one point she claimed to be Spider-Woman after a friend mentioned that their hair was similar, which led to her becoming more popular than she was previously. However, while she was at a party, the area she was located was sucked into Battleworld during the original Secret Wars event. The real Spider-Woman ended up showing up to that location to save people, which gave away that Mary was not actually Spider-Woman. A mob chased Mary and her friend until they were both found by Dr. Doom, who ended up giving them superpowers. Mary had developed extreme strength and durability, and she fought She-Hulk for the first time not too long after acquiring her powers, but she ended up being too cocky. Now, I will mention, kind of as a side note, that there is another Titania that is a lesser character that technically precedes Mary. So Davida DeVito was a wrestler who was a part of an all-women team called the Grapplers. DeVito had gone by the wrestling name of Titania, and one of the reasons why I mentioned this is because DeVito gets enhanced strength at one point from the Power Broker, who we know from Falcon and the Winter Soldier is now Sharon Carter, so I would not be surprised if certain storylines get fused together for this MCU version of Titania. So this show is going to be a legal comedy with a bunch of cameos throughout the series, and one of the main, I would say multiple main cameos that I'm seeing are Hulk, Abomination, Wong, and Daredevil from what we can gather in the main trailers. Now, I don't know how often Daredevil and Wong and stuff will be in it per se, but they're riding on people to want to watch it because certain people are in it, such as Daredevil. Truthfully, I'm not going to go over all these characters and where they're at and what they've been through up until this point in the MCU because they are not main characters of the series, but briefly we can familiarize ourselves with what is happening with them around the show's timeline. So from what I've seen, the show takes place around Shang-Chi, so I believe not too long specifically after the events of the movie. So at this time, Wong has not been through Multiverse of Madness or Spider-Man No Way Home yet, and we see from Shang-Chi that there is a relationship or an agreement of some kind between Wong and Abomination. So transitioning into Abomination, we haven't seen much of him since the Incredible Hulk movie in 2008, so I will give a brief recap of his arc through that movie. So Tim Roth plays Emil Blonsky, a soldier who operates for William Hurt as Thunderbolt Ross, who is actively trying to capture Bruce Banner because he feels that his body is the property of the government due to him turning into the Hulk in the first place from a failed super soldier serum experiment. So Blonsky wants to take in some new experimental super soldier serum to have a fighting chance against the Hulk, which increases his strength significantly, but he's still no match in the end. So after Bruce seemingly cures himself, Blonsky makes Dr. Samuel Stearns, the scientist who helped Bruce, who is also technically the Marvel character named the Leader, on a side note, he makes him inject him with Bruce's gamma-irradiated blood, which transforms him into Abomination. Some blood also spills and falls on Stearns' head, which also turns him into the Leader, although we have also not seen him since this Incredible Hulk movie, although I would say there's a decent chance of him showing up in this show now that I'm thinking about it. So Abomination and the Hulk fight through the streets of New York, with the Hulk obviously winning, and Abomination seemingly being imprisoned the whole time after this movie until the events of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, where we see him and Wong have an agreement of some kind to fight in this tournament that Shang-Chi attends. For Daredevil, I can't even reasonably cover everything I could possibly want to about him, considering it's still technically up in the air, in my opinion, if any of Marvel's previously licensed Netflix shows are canon to the main MCU or not. But just know that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. He's a blind lawyer who was taught martial arts and how to use his blindness in a way that super enhances his other abilities, like his hearing, his smell, and all that stuff. And as far as we know for MCU canon right now, he was Peter Parker's lawyer in Spider-Man No Way Home. And just, I'll throw it out there, if you haven't seen these yet, I gotta tell you to watch the Daredevil series, which is now on Disney Plus, and the rest of the Defenders saga for that matter, because they are all really good, with maybe the exception of Iron Fist. Now for Bruce Banner. So if I were to recap everything he's been through in the MCU, this would go on for an obnoxious amount of time, so I'm not going to do that. So for right now, I'll just recap what happened in the kind of his borderline immediate past. So he was a gladiator on a planet called Sakaar for 2 years after Age of Ultron, and he left with Thor to go save Asgard. After that, they were ambushed by Thanos, and the events of Avengers Infinity War took place. And then in Avengers Endgame, Bruce says he figured out how to coexist with the Hulk and is able to be in that form freely now, with all of his intelligence still maintained. So in the third act of Avengers Endgame, the Hulk snaps the new Infinity Gauntlet to bring back the other half of the universe, which messes up his arm, and he now has to wear a sling. After Endgame, we next see the Hulk in the post-credit scene of Shang-Chi, where he is now back in his Bruce Banner form and his arm is still in the sling. So in this scene, Bruce, Carol Danvers, Wong, Shang-Chi, and Katie examine Shang-Chi's 10 rings and notice that it seems like a beacon of some kind is emitted from the rings, and this was the last time that we saw the Hulk, which seemingly seems like it's supposed to take place right before the events of this show. Finally, I can go over some things to expect from the show itself. So it looks like in the MCU in the show, Jennifer Walters gets her powers from getting into a car accident with Bruce in the car, and his blood gets on her, which turns her into She-Hulk after the accident. He then seems to try to teach her how to control her powers in a type of training montage, and then we know Titania is going to be a villain in this, like I said before, and this show is supposedly going to have a decent amount of cameos, as seen from Daredevil and Frogman in the trailer and stuff, and Wong, Abomination, all of that. In my opinion, most of these cameos will most likely be smaller, lesser-known Marvel characters, but I still think that it'll be entertaining to see nonetheless. That about wraps up all the info I'll be covering today, so comment down below if you are excited for She-Hulk, and if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content, and I appreciate you for watching the video.